when the collective of Ray and his colleagues gathered to launch Newswatch in 1985, they probably were unaware of the revolutionary implications of their professional foray. However, they ended up birthing one of the most incisive and authoritative news magazines in Africa at a time when Time and Newsweek maintained unquestioned dominance on the continent. These international giants were only being complemented by efforts like Chris Okoli's New Breed magazine at the national level, and geostrategic and continental efforts like South Africa, New African, and Africa Now, and a host of others. Newswatch quickly emerged as the national gold standard in enlightened journalism. Its columnists were easily the most authoritative, influenced, and civilized in the nation. Its cover stories were well-researched and grounded. The encyclopedic research prowess of the Newswatch librarian, Nyak Noso, who is sitting there in the audience, was everywhere in the audience in an age without today's Google touch screen access to global information. With the emergence of Newswatch, Patrick Delacour's Daily Times, Abiola's Concord titles, and the arrival of The Guardian, Nigerian journalism redefined itself as a power center, not just an accessory to power. The lead players at Newswatch were no longer press boys to be found at press galleries or the hallways of power. They were purveyors of a certain intangible but real power. Every expression of power comes with inherent dangers. Ray and his colleagues understand this truism all too well as they reflect on the glories, tears, and blood of their years in and around real power. In retrospect, the real significance of the leadership of Ray and Newswatch is not in the sacrifices they had to make as leaders. It is in the legacy in Nigerian media and journalism. The abiding gospel of Newswatch is possibility. It is possible to liberate the voice of the people, to give meaning to the freedom of expression as a cardinal aspiration of a free society. Accordingly, independent and private media initiatives stepped forward to replace government monopoly. Individual journalists and groups of them stepped forward to try their hands at publishing or broadcasting. An avalanche of private newspapers, magazines, and broadcast media emerged to finally bury government monopoly or even participation. Truly, ladies and gentlemen, a million flowers were blooming. Leadership and troubled times. This gathering is not strictly about Newswatch, but Newswatch enabled it. It is also a veritable anchor for understanding the requisites of leadership, both in journalism and the wider polity. I know the leadership we all seek to hear more about in this time and place. It is political leadership as it concerns Nigeria, the nation we all love so passionately. Let us proceed from the simplest description of leadership. It is the ability to develop a vision of community and the capacity to translate that vision into beneficial reality in a manner that carries the followership along. To envision an alternative higher reality, a leader must be enlightened. To translate that vision into reality, the leader must have executive capacity or find those who are equipped. To attract and carry the followership, the leader must possess personal electricity or charisma in the form of oratory, personal courage, integrity, and connectedness to ordinary folks. The people must see aspects of themselves mirrored in the life and story of the leader. Perhaps at no other time, ladies and gentlemen, in our national history has the issue of leadership presented itself so boldly in the front yard of national discourse. In spite of elections that fill various levels of public office in the land, our people continue to yearn endlessly for purposeful leadership. It has therefore become necessary to make a distinction between power incumbency and leadership in the nation. There is, as they say, no vacancy in either Aso Rock Villa or the 36 government houses across the land. Whether inspiring leadership is emanating from these locations is quite a story. But make no mistake about it. The drama of power of incumbency continues to rage all over the land. The sirens blare even louder. The pomp and ceremony of public office is in full gear. The perfunctory rituals of government continue unabated. So also is the impunity of power, the arrogance of today's men, and the injured ego and deflated importance of yesterday's people. The leadership ideal. Genuine leadership is somewhat more subdued than the cacophony of incumbent power. True leadership consists in the ability to inspire and carry an undivided nation along the path of self-realization. It is inspirational, innovative, empathic. In words and actions and personal conduct, the leader touches the vital cord that unites a nation irrespective of creed, ethnicity, class, and even circumstance. More often, what the people value in their leader is intangible. True national leadership is perhaps described and understood by what it is not. It is not water boreholes. It is not endless kilometers of roads or even kilowatts of electricity. It is not the meting out of casual cruelty on your perceived opponents, or the shutting of the window of opportunity to all except your friends, loyalists, and kinsmen. Nor can we mistake as leadership the subversion of the popular mandate into an instrument for dividing nations along all imaginable lines. If anything, these traits create the hunger for genuine leadership in nations such as ours that are so afflicted. From the immediate post-Civil War years till today, the crisis of leadership has plagued our public discourse. It was Chinua Achebe who in the late 1970s identified the crisis of leadership as, quote, the trouble with Nigeria, unquote. We remain frozen in that moment and mired in that intractable crisis. The absence of a coherent national vision and sense of mission has bred a polity whose most recurrent fascination is our immense potential. The hope of what is possible and the dream of where we could still be is what holds this behemoth potential nation together. But in the interim, this generation of Nigerians remains the orphans of missed opportunities, squandered resources, and periodic episodes of mindless leadership. The rhetoric of potential greatness is worn out. It is even worse when mouthed by ignorant politicians who want to win an election and further deepen our leadership crisis. There is a potential in every nation which awaits leaders of purpose to harvest. For how long are we going to remain a potential or virtual nation, ladies and gentlemen? I have heard it said that Nigeria is a young nation. Underlying that claim is the false logic that longevity confers on nations a guaranteed greatness. If that were true, the most advanced nations will be the oldest. On the scale of global development, where are Egypt, Greece, and Portugal today? Egypt is the home of the great pyramids and of decadent dictatorships. It is also the hotbed of the most dangerous fanatics. Greece has a perennial archival interest with an economy that has developed the bad habit of surviving on frequent bailouts. Portugal used to be a colonial power, but is now a virtual third world country with only a football club as its most notable export. At 58, Nigeria is neither old nor young. My fear is that it came into existence with all the infirmities of decadent old age, I beg your pardon. Now, in mature middle age, the nation is afflicted by a cocktail of ailments, some of which can only be cured by killing the patient, hence the loud cries for restructuring or even outright dissolution. The consequences of past leadership missteps and failures now haunt all of us. Our highways are dangerous. Our urban streets are dark alleys hiding sinister possibilities as no one knows what lies in wait. The frontiers of freedom have been fenced by a rampaging insurgency, while squads of killers, sometimes difficult to name, have rendered life in our villages even more capricious, brutish, and short. A nation that started out united and hopeful is today torn along all known divides, just as the number of optimists has dwindled into miserable insignificance. Our youth walk the streets in quest of nothing in a land full of work, but with no opportunities to find work. Yet in the midst of this apparent hopelessness, I could hear the voice of hope rise at the places where our boys were at play in the World Cup. No doubt the broad majority of Nigerians still love their Niger and wish for no other place to call home. That eternal optimism is for me the loud voice crying for the emergence of true national leadership. Models in destructive and restorative leadership. Let us not be deceived. Leadership can kill or save a nation. History is as full of nations that have been ruined by bad leadership as it is of others that have been saved and resurrected from hell because of the emergence of true leadership in the midst of a disaster. First, the bad news. The instructive thing is that most of the leaders who bring their nations to ruin do not always have the luxury of staying behind to watch Rome go up in flames. Mobutu Sese Seko of Zaire. On May 17, 1987, the forces of Laurent Kabila marched into Kinshasa. The long reign of Mobutu Sese Seko in what used to be Zaire was over. Mobutu fled and found his way to Togo. There was no red carpet laid out for him. His friend Eyadema confined him to the plane at the airport while working the phones in search of a place of exile for him. At last, the late King of Morocco agreed to have him. He died in exile. Jean-Bertrand Aristide of Haiti. On 29 September 1991, Mr. Aristide was besieged in the presidential palace in Port-au-Prince. People's power had ousted his ruler, but be airborne first. While still in the air, diplomatic phones were busy searching for a place of exile. He was briefly stateless. Then Thabo Mbeki of South Africa gave him exile, but Haiti was in ruins. Haile Mengistu Mariam of Ethiopia, Rwanda's Paul Kagame. Rwanda under Paul Kagame. By 1994, when the war of genocide ended and a unity government took over, here was Rwanda. All institutions had vanished. Government offices were looted up to the last sheet of paper. Most competent bureaucrats had either been butchered or had fled. The entire country had no water and electricity was scant. Of the 800 judges Rwanda had before the genocide, less than 50 survived. Prior to the war, Rwanda was a desperately poor country with infant mortality, literacy rate, and per capita less than the sub-Saharan African average. It has no resources except lush green vegetation and an overpopulated small territory. Its per capita GDP was $217. An estimated 60% of the people were desperately poor, while life expectancy was a pre-medieval 46. The population was ravaged by a cocktail of diseases. HIV, tuberculosis, and malaria were killing people on an industrial scale. Over 90% of Rwandans were suicide-prone, having witnessed horrendous acts during the genocide. To this story of phenomenal progress in Rwanda must be understood against this horrid background. National integration has been re-established, even though the scars of genocide remain. Rwanda is today a prosperous, neat, no plastic bags since 2008, an orderly country. The economy has grown by an average of 7% since 2010. Income has more than tripled, the economy has grown by an average of 7% since 2010, lifting over 1 million out of poverty in less than 10 years. Per capita income is more than tripled, while Rwanda now ranks above Italy and Greece. It is in the regional top spot in the World Bank's latest Ease of Doing Business Index. So much for strong, purposeful, and visionary leadership. Determinants of national leadership. Irrespective of whatever fancy attributes we may adduce for leadership, the fact remains that national greatness and fulfillment can only be achieved by a succession of the right leadership. Great leadership arises from 3 domains: national history, the strength of individual leaders, and the durability of the institutions of nation being. On the matter of leadership, certain features of Nigerian history should worry us with the benefit of hindsight. Mr. Lugard's 1914 amalgamation of the 2 dual special protectorates of Nigeria was never an exercise in the service of Nigerian nationalism or a viable united Nigerian national project. It was at best an administrative convenience and commercial exigency. The idea of future Nigerian nation was only progressively grafted onto this colonial commercial infrastructure. Similarly, the subsequent anti-colonial struggle by our founding fathers was first and foremost the struggle of ethno-regional elites for separate regional self-rule. This is why the various regions gained self-rule at different times ahead of formal collective independence in 1960. My point here is that in spite of the illustrious struggles of our disparate founding fathers, Nigerian history did not feature a unified leadership model or individual on which independent Nigeria would be built. Our national leadership at independence was the groundwork of our arrangements, negotiations, and compromises. This is in contrast to countries like Kenya and South Africa, where the struggle for independence or majority rule was hinged on a unified vision that will propel the future independent nation. In this regard, there was no mistaking the mission and heroic leadership of a Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, or the founders of the ANC and subsequently Nelson Mandela in South Africa. In effect, Nigerian history may have denied us the chance to evolve a national leadership with a clear vision. There are other nations whose histories are kinder. My best example is Singapore. the late Lee Kuan Yew and his colleagues were in the forefront of the independence movement. As leader from the outset, Lee is the closest we come to a modern philosopher king. He was clear-headed on the national vision, mission, and strategies for achieving them. He was lucky to live and rule long enough to realize his dream of Singapore as a nation, decent and prosperous nation. He bequeathed a stable political system and a very enlightened bureaucracy and viable institutions of state. Another glowing example of consistently strong and purposeful leadership and resounding progress, this time in Africa, is Botswana. Barely 50 years ago, Botswana was an arid and debt-poor backward country without much water and scant-proving natural resources beyond a little coal and copper. It had 3 times more heads of cattle than human beings. There was hardly any arable land. People and cattle scrambled over land at the fringes of the Kalahari Desert. The diamonds for which the country has become known was a later discovery. What made the difference between the privations of its beginnings and the prosperity and order of today is the quality of its leadership from inception. Through a careful and disciplined leadership of Cyril Sekama and his colleagues, a country that was ranked as the poorest nation on earth, and which became independent as Nigeria was descending into anarchy in 1966, is today the African poster child of prosperity, order, and transparent governance. Let me add that if anybody is sleeping, I'm not hearing the snoring. Today, Botswana is the world's leading producer of diamonds. Its democracy is stable, monitored by honest courts and a free press. For the first 35 years of the nation's history, its GDP was the fastest in the world at a consistent 14%. Per capita income has grown from $50 to over $7,000. Literacy rate is in excess of 90%, while infant and mortality rates are among the lowest in the world. Compared to the embarrassment in Angola, which has both diamonds and oil, Botswana has one of the lowest corruption indices in Nigeria. On the brighter side, it has one of the youngest cabinet ministers in the world. Ms. Bokolo Jenewendo, Minister of Trade and Investment, is only 31 years old. Botswana has carefully avoided the resource costs that has crippled countries like Nigeria and Angola. It stands up there like a shining African city on a hill. In Nigeria, the disruptive coup of January 15, 1966 further deepened our leadership crisis. I disagree with those who glamorize that act of military indiscipline. How could any set of rational beings have expected our national leadership to achieve perfection in less than 6 years after independence? It remains the height of youthful delinquency and professional rascality that coup took place. It is an unfortunate precedent which opened an unfortunate chapter of leadership disruptions that have plagued us to this moment. Clearly then, ladies and gentlemen, our national history has not allowed us to evolve the leadership that we need. In our search for redemptive leadership, we can no longer ignore the argument as to whether we in Africa now need strong institutions or strong leaders. It was former US President Barack Obama who posited this problematic while visiting Ghana. Our misfortune in Africa has been that when leaders emerge either by force or by vote, they privatize the institutions of state. Thus, even where the strong institutions exist, they fail to make the leaders accountable. The strength in leadership is not, therefore, as simple as it seems. Only leaders that have personal integrity, decency, and moral stature can respect and preserve the institutions for the common good. In post-apartheid South Africa, for instance, the new constitution had just been inaugurated when Mandela assumed the power. But he had the leadership stature to rule the country in strict obedience to the law and in consonance with the constitutions, with the institutions. Confronted with the same constitution, laws, and institutions, Jacob Zuma threw decency to the winds and bastardized the same institutions for personal gain. We are familiar with situations in which African incumbents personalize and privatize the institutions of state rather indecently. The police, the army, the judiciary, the central bank, the civil service are coerced into seeing themselves as extensions of a particular incumbency. In such a situation, the viability and lifespans of these institutions are reduced to the tenure of a particular incumbent. When that regime ends, an incoming administration has the unenviable task of reinventing the institutions of state. This is the basis of perennial instability in our institutions. In the end, the nation in question ends up with neither leadership nor viable and stable institutions. This, therefore, brings us face to face with the troublesome question of leadership selection in Africa's emerging democracy. Regrettably, political parties, especially in Nigeria, have no concept of, quote, fit and proper persons to put forward for national leadership. Instead of a political meritocracy, we have compromise arrangements that throw up persons purely on account of whether they win an election. It ought to be possible for a fit and proper person to win an election if they are backed by a political party. Unfortunately, we in Nigeria have consistently had political parties that are merely gatherings of contingents of crass interest rather than ideological movements. I doubt that this type of political party culture can ever produce a credible national leadership. Conclusion. The foregoing thoughts may cast a sad pall on the prospects of true leadership, national leadership in our country. Our dream for a happier place to call home is predicated on how soon we can get the kind of leadership that will fulfill the aspirations of most Nigerians. In that quest, I want to advance some observations to those who decide for us. We need to keep fine-tuning the very legal and political environment in which we choose our leadership. A, the use of affidavits and sworn instruments to prove the age and educational qualifications of seekers of high public office should be banned by law. Those who cannot remember when they were born or what schools they attended and certificates obtained have no business in leading anybody. B, the concept of zoning or rotation on geopolitical basis of the presidency and other key political offices by political parties should be outlawed. It is in conflict with the spirit of the Constitution, which rejects all forms of discrimination among Nigerians. If anything, the political parties should zone the leadership to merit, which can now be found all over the country. We need to enthrone a political meritocracy now if we are to become competitive in the world. C, it is time for the National Assembly to review and amend the constitutional guarantee of immunity to high public office holders. Equality before the law is an elementary requirement of all democracies. A polity that allows unfit persons to occupy high office cannot also guarantee them immunity from prosecution. We also must quickly ensure true equality before the law. D, leadership requires tutelage. We should resurrect the defunct Center for Democratic Studies to continuously train and orientate elected public officials on the rudiments of democratic governance. Ladies and gentlemen, we may not have offered all the solutions. I hope, however, that we have raised enough questions for just one day. I thank Mr. Ekwu and his family for the honor of their kind invitation. In gathering such an eminent audience to listen to me, they have humbled me with a rare privilege. As I look at this audience, and I do so now, and the millions who have read people like Ray for almost 4 decades, I believe more in Nigeria. Indeed, there remains a ray of hope for our country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, we have been a wonderful audience. Thank you very much.
But they do not know that their nonchalance would come back to bite them when they have a bad leader, and that is what is happening, or that's what happens. Still quoting Ray, ladies and gentlemen, desperate politicians, he says, are dangerous to any society because they tend to tear down the fabric of the society in their attempt to satisfy their greed for power. Wow. Words of the elders are words of wisdom. And this man has made his name. He's taking our country worldwide through his craft. Very uncommon craft, I must say. Your hands together for Mr. Reiko again. Thank you. 70 years, surgeon on planet Earth, 45 glorious years in this journalism profession. Well, while the lecture was going on, I noticed the arrival of Governor Pat Utomi, Professor Pat Utomi. Your hands please together for him. Thank you. Professor Kingsley Moralu, thank you very much, former Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, thank you. Also eyeing the presidential seat, we wish you all the best. I just wish they can give people like you the chance to do it. Right, this country now, wow. Now, Dr. Manuel Ekwem, SSG Akwa Ibom State, I told you about him much earlier, he just joined us. I'd like him to rise for recognition. Please rise, sir, for recognition. Thank you very much. He's representing the governor of Akwa Ibom State in this audience today, and I think we should appropriately seat you. Please come up here, sir. I wonder if the applause could lead him here. Thank you.
Gentlemen, Mr. Rioku, thank you very much for the honor of the invitation and a very happy birthday. I was pleasantly surprised when I got his email asking me to be a discussant at this event, and indeed it is an honor to be here. I won't say much about the lecture. I think for me, the lecture talks about where we are, what the challenges are, what sort of road we've traversed to get to where we are. But really for me, it's really about looking ahead. I think most of the people in this room would probably older than me easily. And it's a good, as we're celebrating Mr. Ekwu at his 70th birthday, to take stock of what has gotten Nigeria to where we are now, and our lack of, as Mr. Amadi called it, strong, purposeful, and visionary leadership. So the middle class and upper middle class of Nigeria, and I think I would say quite confidently that most of the people in this room fall in that category. I think we really just need to be honest with ourselves about the Nigeria that we want. We do a really good job of talking. We do a really good job of analyzing. We do a really good job of bellyaching of what has been and what could be. But we do very little in terms of taking responsibility for the Nigeria that we want to see. And since this is also a media gathering, I think it's also very important in terms of the media's commitment to issues. I mean, most people complain about CNN that they talk about Trump nonstop. But there's a reason why, because I think from, I guess, my own perception, is that for them, what Trump is doing to America is sort of beyond their minds. Like, is this really happening before our very eyes? And they've set themselves up to continue to put that in front of Americans. So Americans are thinking about the issues, are aware of the issues. Beyond online publications, and I'll use Premium Times as an example with their Kemi Adeosun investigation, they've stayed on it. They have a counter on their website counting down the number of days that have passed since they've issued their, they've done their story, and no one has responded. So to the media, a challenge. So middle class, upper middle class citizens around what it is that we really want. My friends know me. They don't call me to complain about Nigeria because I'm not available for that kind of conversation. I'm not. You call me if you want to talk about what are we going to do. I run an organization that focuses on educating Nigerians about their rights and responsibilities. And so in that space, we realized that, and we talked about, Mr. Mahdi talked about it in the context of history. Like, what do Nigerians really understand about the issues? What do they really understand of what the Constitution says about their rights? So if we educate people around what their rights and responsibilities are, then we can begin to have a conversation around, okay, what are you then willing to do about it? We have a radio program on 15 states across the country. And it's always amazing when people call and we try to educate them and say, so your National Assembly member works for you. This is his number, call him. And people are like, sorry. Okay, sorry. I'll round up shortly. And so we educate them to call and to let them know that you're working for us, what are you doing? So, but they're always surprised and say, oh, really, we can call? So I think, to round up really, for me, it's a challenge, not about what Mr. Mahdi said about where we are, but really about what it is, what are we willing to do about where we want to go. And I'll close with an excerpt from the Constitution, just as a reminder. The Federal Republic of Nigeria shall be a state based on the principles of democracy and social justice. It is hereby accordingly declared that sovereignty belongs to the people of Nigeria, from whom government, through this Constitution, derives all its powers and authority. The security and welfare of the people shall be the primary purpose of government, and the participation of the people in their government shall be ensured in accordance with the provisions of this Constitution. This is from Chapter 2. And I'll go down quickly to Section 17 of that says, the state's social order is founded on ideals of freedom, equality, and justice. In furtherance of the social order, every citizen shall have equality of rights, obligations, and opportunities before the law. The sanctity of the human person shall be recognized, and human dignity shall be maintained and enhanced. Governmental actions shall be humane. Exploitation of human or natural resources in any form whatsoever for reasons other than the good of the community shall be prevented. The independence, impartiality, and integrity of courts of law and easy accessibility thereto shall be secured and maintained. Thank you.
I think I deserve a knock on the head for this submission. Lest I be tagged somebody who who's not gender sensitive. Let me quickly just say this about the last speaker. She's the executive director of Enough is Enough, Nigeria, a coalition of individuals and organizations committed to building a culture of good governance and public accountability in Nigeria through active citizenship. I'd like to thank you. Put your hands together for her again. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, there is very little that one needs to add to Dr. Amota's paper, and the delivery is just as good as the writing, so congratulations on that. Well, the case is very well made that a nation rises or falls on the strength of its leadership. But in some of the examples given in that lecture, I was almost worried by some of the people cited there. Kagame is a very strong leader, quite all right, and a few of the other ones. But when you got to the place of Botswana, I was quite impressed by that, because that is one place where we can see democracy, and then everything works as it should in leadership positions. And I think it's the kind of example that Nigeria should copy. From Sasekama to Kwet Masiri, from Kwet Masiri to Festus Kotimbayi Mogai, from Mogai to Ayankama, who has just willfully given up office having completed his term without bothering to extend his term or amend the constitution. So that is a very fantastic example because Nigerians worry about whether a democracy can produce the kind of leadership that we're talking about. And Botswana tells us that that is possible once you have integrity. And I think it was Ted Kennedy who said, integrity is the lifeblood of democracy. But deceit is poison in its veins. What we have in Nigeria over the years is poison in our veins, and we need to find a way to get it out of our veins. And for Uncle Ray, I was still in the Polytechnic during my university. When he wrote the series titled Sodom and Gomorrah, I beg everybody in this audience to tell me if we don't need to repeat that article today on account of where Nigeria is because of poor leadership. So very little has changed and little is changing. Now, I want us to also advance our minds to the process of recruiting our leaders in this country, which that people also dealt with. We have a problem with our leadership recruitment mentality. I'm involved in a little exercise in my community, and the experience is not palatable at all. And I'm sure quite a number, maybe Professor Tommy, you haven't gone home too often. I'm sure Mr. Babarisa will testify to this. It's not Chief Ashoba, of course, has gone through all of that. It's not easy to even let our people know. Yorubas have a saying that Antori Ojeja, the people for whom we appear to be fighting, you wonder what exactly they have. So we have a problem with the followership, just as we have with the leadership. Meanwhile, that was a very good paper, and I believe Nigerians will learn one or two things from it. Thank you.
Okay. We'll pass that blame to the general who is there. Soja Akiniade. It was him I first heard the term Dan the butcher. So if you want to butcher anybody, take your knife there first. Good day, everybody. I want to say happy birthday to Uncle Ray. I have to say this. I got my first job in Newswatch. I did not write an application letter in the formal way people wrote. I just wrote an informal letter, having run around the streets of Lagos and jumped on Mulwe and all of that and found heartbreaks and stone walls everywhere. And the letter went to Ray. Ray read it. He said he was impressed by the quality of writing. He sent a dispatch rider to my home. My father was waiting for me, looking all the way, trying to see whatever was in this letter from Newswatch. I got the letter, and it was jubilating. Alas, I could not go to the company because that was the time Babangida shut the doors. So I waited until Femi Ojudu told me, look, go there. I started going there. So I went there, and Ray saw it, saw me, welcomed me to his office. He looked at the letter again and said, I was impressed by the quality of writing. I sent it to Ray, look at the comment. I sent it to Dan, look at the comment of Dan. I sent it to Yakubu, so we are employing you today. That was how I got my job. That's how I got my start in Newswatch. So I see here my fathers in journalism, Ray, Dan, Yakubu, Soji, of course, Dari Babarisa, and so on and so forth. Well, one thing that struck me about the speech was that he said, well, these people blaze the trail in journalism. So have we ever blazed the trail in leadership? We never did because we never had the opportunity to. Because leadership in Nigeria was tribally imposed and tribally inspired. We had three big headaches as the tripod of Nigerian leadership. One from the west, one from the east, and one from the north, and we have become entranced with the politics of the tribe. That is why we have strong men and we don't have institutions. That is why we have politicians, we don't have statesmen. That is why we have ideas submerged in money rather than in direction. So when we had then, what did you expect? We started looking for heroes. We started looking for a hero, and when we're looking for heroes, we're not looking for Nigerian heroes. You wanted an Ishekiri hero, I'm from Ishekiri. You wanted an Robo hero. You wanted a Yoruba hero, you had Awolowo. You wanted an Igbo hero, you had Zik. After I had Ojuku. And then in the north, you wanted heroes, and we have had all of them from Ahmadu Bello and so on and so forth. So when we have our constitution that tells us that we need to work together, we seem to be fooling ourselves. Because we have not really come to the idea that we want to build a nation that has leadership. But first, the nation has to have a soul. Democracies have worked everywhere because democracies are described as ideologies of consensus. The majority wins. And when the majority wins, you don't calculate them according to tribes and so on. You calculate them according to states, and states are not supposed to be defined by ethnic proclivities. But since our country has become that way, people have called for restructuring, and because we cannot restructure, we cannot have leadership, and because we cannot have leadership, we have people jumping from red chamber to red chamber. We have people who do not understand anything about politics but the pocketbooks. So let us not kid ourselves. We are not there yet. We are not even close. We are not even peeping because the horizon is so clouded. We have not even started to talk about what the real meaning of leadership is. When Achebe said the problem of Nigeria is simply and squarely a problem of leadership, in his book, The Trouble of Nigeria, I have a problem with that because he was oversimplifying the question of leadership in Nigeria. Because we never really had a soul in Nigeria, so we keep looking for heroes. And I end with the play by Galileo, when somebody said, happy is a land that needs a hero. He said, no, unhappy is a land that needs a hero. Thank you.
Why? Why have we not been able to establish national leadership as has happened in other parts? Why have we not been able to rise from our trauma of, say, the Civil War to find a new lease of life as a nation, to have new leadership as a nation? So the question is why?
The position taken by Professor Achebe was half of the entire picture, that the crisis of leadership is the trouble with Nigeria. But at the Guardian lecture about 4 or 5 years ago, I'm sure Robert Abate can remind me, he said something that I found very profound, and that is the answer to the why. He referred us to the 2 national anthems we have had so far. The first one was Nigeria, we hailed our own, their native land, blah, blah. And that invoked Nigeria, the image of Nigeria as a father. The current one, Arise to Compatriots, invoked the image of Nigeria as a mom, the motherland. Then he said in that lecture, Nigeria is neither our mother nor our father. So what's Nigeria? Nigeria is a child. And if you are ever going to have a future, you recognize the place of the child in your life, you bring him or her up very well. He or she could be rascally, it could be this, could be that. But a child is given love. I don't see too much love being given to Nigeria by all Nigerians. We treat Nigeria as a cake to be cut and shared, not as a child to be nurtured and then brought up with a good future. So the reason and the why we are where we are is because, well, maybe I'll borrow Sam's phrase, that maybe we don't have a soul as a country before. But more importantly, we don't even know that this Nigeria is a child to whom all of us are collective parents and which we should bring up so that we may have a future. In my place, if you are going to have a future, I will tell you there's only one thing you need to build. It's not a house. There is something you need to purchase. It's not a car. It is the best education for that child. It's love for that child. When we begin to find Nigeria as a child and give it or give her or him, whatever is, we treat Nigeria as a male or a female child, it's a child that we must give love to. And until we do that, we won't be able to find the kind of leadership that we want. Secondly, I spoke about why integrity matters. You cannot be a father or mother to a child without leading by example. We don't have leaders who lead by example in Nigeria, and that is the reason we're where we are. Thank you.
I want to give sacrifice. I only give one example. Recently, there was a massacre in Plateau State. A certain cleric called Abdullahi Abubakar hid about 300 Christians in his mosque. And when the goons arrived, he stood there on behalf of humanity and on behalf of the tenderness and love that is the root of all true faith. And he lied that nobody was being hidden there. He was standing there between life and death. He chose to sacrifice himself without thinking whether those people called Jehovah or Allah. But he saw them as human beings with hearts beating like his own. Until we have leaders with that kind of compassion and empathy and a sense of sacrifice, we have not started.
What Mr. Sam said, but that the leaders, it's not in looking outward, but it's looking inward. The Imam you gave his example was a citizen who chose to do the right thing. So even for me, it's back to my point about being honest about what it is that we want and what is the Nigeria that we want. So that partly the why of personal responsibility. And the second is also a deliberate training of the type of leaders that we want. The only program I know that's developing young people, because at least there's a generation that understands. The generation below me, this is the Nigeria that they know. So their expectations of what to come out from them would be quite different because this is all they've seen. But there's no program, at least that I'm aware of, that's actually raising a generation to understand governance and want to take a place in governance. The only one that I know of, the one that Malamir Rufai just started this year, the Kashim Ibrahim Fellows, I think has a cohort of 30 young people, all under 30, if I'm not mistaken, who they have a one-year internship on governance. So they're attached to different ministries in Kaduna states to understand how governance works and how the process is. So I think one thing, personal responsibility, not looking at leaders as other people, but leaders as ourselves. We're leaders in different spheres. And secondly, deliberate programs to raise the type of leaders that we need in Nigeria.
Dan. Please, ladies and gentlemen, I am very personally excited by the quality of discussion here. And the remarks that I want to make them on my own account. Then afterwards, later on, I will give my boss's Google message to our brother Ray. Let me please permit me to say the following. As Emmanuel Effiong Ekuwem, my father was a primary school teacher and catechist. And many areas, wards, councillors, villages, town associations, senior prefects, student union presidents, leadership in all of its ramifications. Now, why am I interested in that? Emmanuel Effiong Ekuwem, as I stand, my brothers and sisters, I am a logical outcome of the totality of my experience, from the day I was born to where I am today. That's one. Number two, we think in choices, and there's a level of delectation surrounding every choice that we make. The question is, what do we choose, and how do we choose? What capacity do we have to make the right choices? And that capacity has to do from when you were born, all the experiences in life, the schools you attended, the teachers that taught you, to the point you are required to take that decision. That is what enables you to make high quality decisions. So when you have a president of the country, a governor of the state, a commissioner, whatever, do with what you have. You cannot give what you do not have. Now, I'll give you an example. I am privileged to have a position in my home state, which I deal with all manner of people. And the capacity to listen to them and resolve order from chaos and counter arguments from people, then you will not joke with the capacity. And that, my brothers and sisters, takes me to that we have to start from bottom up and top down. Top down, Mr. President, the governors, the commissioners, senators. Bottom up, go back to the right schools and the right teachers. I can tell you, when you take a decision, there is some attraction to the value of the decision you've taken. And if you have not given a child the right capacity, I repeat, the right capacity to take the right decision, then that decision would be counterproductive, would put the society in jeopardy. Let me illustrate with a single point. Yeah, thank you, Dan. You know, this is the point. Mr. A is Mr. President or Mr. whatever. You are currently the incumbent. And you know that Mr. B, in your conscience, you know that this is the best person to succeed you, irrespective of your position. You bypass Mr. B and pick Mr. C, who is one order of magnitude less competent than you. You forget that when Mr. C, who is less competent, assumes office, when he too is leaving office, you will go for you bypass Mr. D and pick Mr. E. All right? And then Mr. E is second orders of magnitude less competent than Mr. A, who was the primary incumbent. When E is handing over, you will bypass F and pick G. So this is what happens. This country is undergoing a cumulatively deteriorating levels of mediocrity in leadership. And until we fix it, and therefore it is top down and bottom up. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have to do then is this. Please, Dan, please, Dr. Amuta, please, those who have spoken, from this year, next year general election, thenceforth, sufficient amount, look at this is the media gathering mostly, some levels of due diligence, thorough due diligence on who you vote for. Because that person, when he assumes office, the totality of his upbringing and the capacity that he has will come to play while in office. Thank you.
Totally disagreeing with those who think that there has been no leadership by example. There are, and we have several examples, and we could have cited them. The Malam that lied about the people that were hiding in his mosque, and several others, even in a more exposed position. I'm not afraid to say that I led by example, because I did. So, and we have clusters of leaders, but what we are doing is we are listening to what ASSG is saying. We pick. Why should anybody pick? Why do we have elections? So we have, and I listened to all the points you made. A, B, C, D. I didn't hear anything about the electoral process. So long as we do not hand over to the people the right to choose, and we are allowing these leaders, when they get, today I read in the paper that my governor is being disgraced out of office because he was insubordinate to his predecessor, because his predecessor picked him. For goodness sake, we want elections in this country, otherwise we will not make progress. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kenneth Memorial, and by the grace of God, on May 29, 2019, we will put an end to the leadership question with an answer, with a decisive answer. Now, let me just say how honored I am to be here. Rebu was my very first boss in life. The first job I ever had was with Newswatch Communications in the late 1980s, and I was his special assistant. Now, so that goes back a very long way. When I finished my youth service, like many young people, I was disillusioned with Nigeria. Even back then, that was 30 years ago. And I planned to check out of the country. And I was waiting for the rain to finish falling. I had an appointment at the American Embassy, and I got a phone call from a friend of mine who said, Repu of Newswatch is looking for a special assistant. I've mentioned your name to him and your profile. Would you be interested in this job? I very quickly placed a phone call to my father from Shell Petroleum, where I was doing my youth service. And I said to my father, here's what I heard. My father said something. Repu? I said, yes. Go and take that job immediately. And I took it, and I have never regretted it. Ray, I want to say thank you. As I congratulate you on your 70th birthday, I want to thank you for your support for me in the early days of my professional career. And while I was in Newswatch, Newswatch did so many things for me. I learned how to write, I fancied myself a journalist, even though I was originally a lawyer. And of course, later on, have had several other incarnations. But while in Newswatch, I decided to go and take a master's degree at the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy at Tufts University. And I wrote a letter to another man seated here. Newswatch gave me, the Fletcher School gave me admission, $25,000, I couldn't afford it. I postponed by 1 year and started looking for money. I went to all the traders from my part of the country in Lagos. Oh, what a wonderful achievement, but business is hard. So each meeting was a disappointment. I wrote a letter to one man seated here, Professor Bolaji Akinyemi, who is a distinguished alumnus of the Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy and had just finished his term as foreign minister in the Babangida administration. I didn't think he would reply me. A few days later, I got a letter giving me an appointment to see him. I went to see him with my CV, and he said, young man, this is very good. I don't have money to pay for your school fees, but I'll write a letter for you. And Professor Bolaji Akinyemi wrote a letter to the Fletcher School that I can read from my heart if I have more time today. And 6 weeks later, I got a letter informing me that I had been awarded the journey to attend the Fletcher School. So Professor Bolaji Akinyemi wrote that letter that persuaded the school to give me that break. So this is a very emotional outing for me, and I'd just like to thank everyone, Dan Abwese, Yakubu Mohammed, my bosses, the General, Sajia Kirinade, and every other person seated here. Ray, thank you very much, and congratulations at 70. Thank you for the role you played in shaping me, and to Professor, the same thing. And I just want to wish everyone well and to wish our country well. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Ray, let me start by saying, happy birthday, many more years. You know, I looked at some of my classmates in 1988-89. She was chief of Sabah. The question of leadership, like I said to Obama, is based on two things. Number one, Nigerians have never really given ourselves a constitution. The constitution we are using today was given to us by the military. And it says that we Nigerians give to ourselves, we Nigerians, the people, give to ourselves a constitution. I said to him, have you seen that film or that picture where the military were playing draft? Did you see that picture? That picture is still invoked today. Until we get rid of that picture, Nigeria will never be united. I will never get leadership. That picture should dictate who rules this country. That picture should say whether we have leadership or not. That's why people keep running to Mina or Abeokuta, Taraba. We have not really allowed the Democrats to take control of this country. Until we do that, Nigeria will be better. Thank you very much.
The Chairman, celebrant, ladies and gentlemen, I didn't know I'm going to speak. I came with Uncle Sam, and you know Uncle Sam is somebody that disappears unceremoniously. I'm surprised he's still sitting down today. If you are not careful, he will soon disappear. Well, Ray, if you look at the picture, you saw Ray standing in his cell. That was a Santana Court, Tinubu Square, when he and Ilegiwa were locked up by Deuce, and they said they caused the fire at Nighter building by their writing. And Abiola became confused as publisher of Concord, didn't know what to do. Panicked, so I mobilized from Ibadan. And we came to Lagos, went to the High Court, got the judge to release them. And we virtually went to Central Court and stood on the neck of the magistrate that they must be released. But of course, the judicial person said, until he gets the order signed. somehow we intimidated him until Delegiwa and who hadn't had their life for about 3 or 4 days were released from the magistrate court at Tinubu's that day. So, hey, that you have survived up till now, I want to congratulate you. We've all been through all these things before, and we have survived. The chairman was quarreling about his age, and I'm surprised Chidi said we should ban affidavit age. It's not possible. I was born in Osogbo. There was no register of birth. I was too small to go to primary school. They said my hand didn't reach my hair, and I was denied. I started school late. By the time I got to Methodist Boys High School, and they took the average age, they had to reduce my age by 2. So from 1939, I became 1941. And would Chidi say that's my fault? That I for years lived by affidavit age. On my passport is still 1941. I cannot change it because in this era of internet, you cannot, if you change it, it becomes a problem for you. Now I've reclaimed my original age of July 1939 because I was told I was born on a Saturday, and it was July. My father wrote the thing in Yoruba there, and I calculated. I knew that it was July 15, 1939. Now I'm claiming by age. That's why the chairman is saying we argue about age. He tells me go and claim your affidavit dates. His father was a well-grounded, educated reverend who had his age written, and so I'm telling him I'm senior to him. I'm 79. He's still to be 79. So, ladies and gentlemen, leadership. Yes, former governor of Akwa Ibom has spoken. That our leadership. In 1999, I can tell you, the level of governors who are elected then through open ballot system. Hell, Obasanjo. If you didn't hold Obasanjo, you would have gone AYR from 1999 to 2003. And there was no difference between AD and PDP. We AD were the firebrand at Council of State, and he would support us PDP. And we never discriminated. So there have been leadership. It is true. I'm sorry to say, people say I keep talking about Obasanjo. The day Obasanjo rigged the AD governors out of Council of State, that was the beginning of the downward trend of the leadership in this country. I have no regret. I'm proud that when they talk about people doing the civil responsibility, we were trained. And I'm happy Atta is here. I still pay my tax. Even the money I earn in dollars, I pay to Ogun State and Lagos in dollars. I do my civic responsibility. And I'm proud to say that none of us is before ICPC or EFCC. The governors of our time. So let's say it frankly. He was talking about my classmate in 1989. We wrote the constitution that we believe was best for this country, but the meeting never allowed it to happen. But I'm not despondent. Those of you have not read the amendment to the Electoral Act as passed by the National Assembly. If you have read it, I have hope that 2019 election will not be the same election as others. In that amendment, they have put in there that electronic system must be used in all elections. They did not say car reader. The most modern electronic system. And that's important. Any body who conducts auditing of those who want to vote and did not transmit it immediately to their quarters will have 5 years jail. That's the beginning of controlling our elections. Any INEC person who conducts election and did not transmit the result immediately by electronic system will go to jail 5 years. The provisions in that electoral act, which has not been signed, forget about sequence of election. Let us sign the other provisions that are in that amendment to the Electoral Act. Then we shall start having the kind of election to have produced Governor Atta and myself in 1999. When it was open ballot, the Afenifere leader didn't want me. But I went to the field and it was open ballot and I won. So I want to beg you, I have hope. If the 19th amendment to the Constitution, the Electoral Act is signed, 2019 election will not be the same again. If Nigeria can do point of sales and alert on your system from the bank, I do not see any reason why INEC should not buy time on the satellite and transfer results immediately to the headquarters. So the issue of producing 1.9 votes, 1.9 million votes in Kano, and you will have read 1.9 million votes by 7 o'clock cannot be possible. In Akwa Ibom, the party lost virtually the state assembly. The result of the election was so high, but the Supreme Court gave a judgment. That's why they said the law is an ass. The Supreme Court said the carrier is not in the Electoral Act, so they are not going to even consider the result of the electoral of the carrier that showed that only thousands of people were accredited, and the return of votes were millions. Supreme Court gave the judgment to the governor in Akwa Ibom, gave the judgment to the governor in Rivers. It will not happen again. I have hope for this country, and if all of us here, and I blame all of you, on the day of election you sleep. You leave the market women, you leave the area boy to collect 5,000 naira. They collect 5,000 naira and sell their votes. If you stand at your polling booth, each of you, nobody will be able to sell votes at 5,000 and get away with it. Thank you.
To express them again in 2 minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Moderator. I've listened to the views that have been expressed. I'll just leave you with one thought. The problem that we have is in not recognizing that often the change that we advocate will involve sacrifice and loss by some people and gain by other people. What we need to do is to find that middle ground where those who are going to lose in their status quo gains and those who are going to benefit by the change can meet and reach a consensus on the changes that will benefit everybody. You are not going to get all that you want, and neither would the status quo elements lose all their benefits now. The debate about restructuring often ignores the fact that the North has to lose some of their benefits if we have restructuring. That does not mean that it is not in their interest to lose those benefits, because if they don't give up some of those benefits, they may end up losing everything if things fall apart. But that debate has to take place within the ambience of respect for the views of everybody. I don't see that respect. I see abuse. I listen to abuse. And I wish us well. I can't remember whether it was Stalin or somebody who said, it's not the people who vote that determine an election. It's the people who count the votes. Who? Einstein said so. Well, it was true then, and it is still true now. I like the tail end of Governor Shoba's submission. If that electoral act is signed, why has it not been signed all this time? Because those who need to benefit by counting of ballots manually don't want the electronic electronic act that would bring sanity into our election. I wish us well. Honestly, I think we all wish us well, this country, but I have my fears. Thank you.
I thank the panelists, Ms. Adamalekun, Deba Deshino, and Sam Omate, as well as the guest panelists, the SSG Akwa Ibom State. I think on that note, we rise from this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Well, sir, he's multifacetedly robed today, multidisciplinarily robed today, and he has performed all the functions very well. If you agree with me, your hands together for him again. Thank you. Now, we have time we must manage, and that's what I've been doing all my life. But let me just say this. For those of us who would like to see all of this, the way it started up till now and when we went, you can tune to BOS, not even BOS, Biscon Television. It's on GoTV. Everything, you'll see it almost unedited. I'll give you that. It's called Biscon TV on GoTV. It's on 108. Please try and do that. We've been doing that for the past 9 months, and better join us. Well, I don't know if you know, too, that on BOS has about 8 million views on YouTube. So we're also trying to spread our own dragnets in these matters. But now, the man we're celebrating has asked me to call 3 of his children. One of the Google messages also went along with the last portion of this show. But let me quickly call then on Dr. Udo Oduaka, and who is representing NDDC in the audience here this morning, or this afternoon. Representative of NDDC, Google message quickly. National Open University should also get ready for the Google message. And I've also seen Lagos State Government here. The Commissioner for Information is also here with us. I'm sure he would also deliver something.
I stand here representing Mr. Nsima Ikere, Managing Director of NDDC. And because I represent him, it's going to be one opportunity to call my boss, who gave me a great opportunity to shine while it lasted, by his first name, Ray. Happy birthday, Ray. I celebrate today a great son of Akwa Ibom State and of the Niger Delta, an extraordinary wordsmith with an uncanny ability to clothe simple, everyday words with beauty, meaning, and the force of logic. Unbelievable that Ray Ekpo is 70. He has had an everyday presence in our lives for so long that you can easily excuse those who think he is ageless. What a massive beacon of hope he has been this past 70 years. He's been an embodiment of journalistic pleasure and excellence. Some of us read him as our English textbook growing up. Others followed him as a bright star in our firmament. His checkered history of travels and triumph serves as a fitting testimonial to his relentless pursuit of truth and how to make journalism count for what truly matters. Someone wrote that where the press is full of good news, half of its good men are in jail. Journalism, as Ray knows it, involves telling the truth to power and getting locked down in the process. His frequent trips in and out of jail and brushes with the law bear eloquent testimony. As a child growing up in the then southeastern states, Ray was one of the rich collection of writers and journalists who shaped the thoughts and opinions of our fathers and forced them to insist that we must read the Nigerian Chronicle at a very tender age. They loved the way he wrote and wanted us all to write like him. His movement to Sunday Times was celebrated across the state as a well-deserved professional promotion and an example that if you work hard and excel like Ray, the world will come to you. My father, who worked with a government agency, was an avid reader of both the Chronicle and publication of the Daily Times. And at 87, he has asked me to thank you on behalf of his generation for the silent impact you had on them who, as young fathers, were in search of role models for their children. Thank you, sir. Just that, I got to find out what I have never told you, that in you is homegrown militancy, buried deep within you. And today, he's asked me to say this publicly, that the entire Niger Delta region owes you a debt of gratitude for your journalistic activism which helped to draw attention to the deplorable condition of oil producing communities. The story goes that as a features writer for the Nigerian Chronicle, your editor assigned you to do a report on the situation in Ibadan, where Mobil operated. What you saw was so heart-wrenching that in addition to filing your reports, you returned to the communities many times and convinced them with words and money to protest the inhuman conditions that they were living in. Not only did it produce stories you gladly reported, that action brought real attention to the plight of oil-producing communities and resulted in a series of interventions by Mobil and the federal government years later. Thank you, sir. Today, NDDC represents government's response to underdevelopment in the Niger Delta. Over the past 17 years, the Commission has worked hard to address development challenges of our people and communities. It is work in progress, but one in which we are deploying our best ideas and our best resources. We are conscious that if we fail, Ray would definitely beam his rays of light on us, and nobody wants to have a 70-year-old pro with 45 years of experience breathing down his neck. Ray is just one reason we do not want and cannot fail. That is a debt we owe you, sir. So on behalf of the Niger Delta Commission and the region you love and have fought for so hard, we say happy birthday to you. We say happy birthday to you and many happy returns of this day. God bless you, sir.
NDDC. Now, he was a guest. Did you say lecturer or something? But now he wants to talk for Akwa Ibom State Government. Dr. Emmanuel Ekwem, SSG, Akwa Ibom State, will be on the podium now. Lagos State Government will follow next, please. Mr. Bangweton, please get ready.
Your Excellencies, Senator, ladies and gentlemen, let me now deliver my boss's message. The Executive Governor of Akwa Ibom State, Dr. Emmanuel, who, as we speak, is having a forum with INEC on the kind of stuff we've been talking about in the earlier session, transparency and accountability in the conduct of elections. So as I speak, this is going on Senior Ray in Ibom Hall in Uyo. Ray, let me recognize our great-grand boss, my great-grand boss. Ladies and gentlemen, in our Akwa Ibom State is the way we put things like that. We say, your boss is the governor. And then the immediate past governor is your grand boss. And the former governor is your great-grand boss. So we in government, we always refer to Obong Architect Atta as our great-grand boss. Ray, as you were being commended and words of encomiums were showered on you, one thing particularly struck me. Fine young men and women came up here, and someone else talked to you about them. One young man here sent a note to you, and he wrote his desires on the piece of paper, and you went through it, and you sent one of your peers, you sent to go and bring him, to fetch him. The way you write, and the way you had always been writing, I know that when I was doing my second master's in Ife, we used to gather in clusters, to read Newswatch. I grew up in Lamanson, and I know that when you were in Sunday Times, then Concord, we used to gather in groups. And your intellectual depth, the way you pinpointed issues, the verbiage with which you couch your thoughts were such that I could lie on my bed as a young man and virtually felt like eating the paper, not because the paper was bad, but because the quality of thought in the paper was really, really, really sweet for me. So, Senator Ray, I talked here earlier on my personal capacity about capacity. It took you to see brilliance in those young men. You never knew them. And I took particular interest in the fact that none of them had an Akwa Ibom surname. None. The three that spoke about how you help them. That is a man sitting behind me whose capacity, whose disposition is to do what is good. Because biases and prejudices make you to trust the untrustworthy and to distrust the trustworthy. And dear brother Real, you are not in that group. Secondly, sorry, thank you, and you would applaud later on. And as I was airborne here, something came to my mind. This fine gentleman called Ray, and his first name is Ray, we call him Ray in Akwa Ibom State. All I could do as an electronic engineer and as an ICT person, as a physicist, I said, I think his name really goes well. Ray. What that means is this. Within the ambience of electromagnetics, if you are not qualified, you do something wrong, you are not competent, woe betide you if the ray of Ray's radar falls on you. It means that Ray will pick the deficiencies, the incompetence, the turpitude of moral conduct in you while you are in public office. And you did this even during military regimes. Can you imagine the courage, the audacity of commitment to patriotism, even to the risk of your life? May the good Lord bless you, Ray. And I would like then, from what my boss told me, that I should specially commend that everlasting spouse of yours, Oyai, Eku. Oyai in Akwa Ibom. Akwa Ibom means beauty. A woman of tremendous beauty at heart and in thoughts. Beauty at home. It is not easy. It is not easy when your wife whispers to you not to step forward in service of your country, in defense of your country, using the pen for you to do so. And it took Oyai to allow you, providing the firepower, the gasoline from the home front for Ray to move forward, to do what it did to contribute to the development of our country. God bless you, Oyai. The last point I would like to make is that this fine gentleman, Ray, whose intellect is so scintillating, and his commitment to the national discourse to make sure that we as a nation, we do what is right and move the country forward. My father used to say that only a child that does not want to grow tall will always compare his height with a midget. In the Hebrew language, it's very interesting to say. It's more interesting, but in English, it's not so sweet. If a child wants to grow tall, let him or her not always be comparing his or her height with a midget. If you want to grow tall, always compare your height with a giant. Ray always, in all of his writings, yearns for his country, writes for his country, mourns for his country, prays for his country, suffers for his country, stays behind the bars in police custody for his country.
With due courtesies to the House, on behalf of His Excellency, the Governor of Lagos State, we see the Rehepu narrative as the story of Lagos being the destination of success. A place where you come, you dream, and with hard work, your dream comes true. So to us, therefore, Ray is not just Ray. He's one of those mentors, those symbols that define the Lagos narrative. I am particularly privileged to be here because as a journalist who have grown reading, learning from the writings of our star actor today, which has been quite a very fulfilling experience. But before I go further, let me just make a few remarks, particularly on the seminar we just had, the colloquium. I think unless we look at what is happening to the student movement in this country, we'll be missing the whole game. If we are looking for the future leaders of this country, and we are ignoring the circumstances in which students are growing in our universities, if we are ignoring the fact that there is no mentorship right now going on, in our institutions of higher learning. If we are ignoring that the character of the students emerging as leaders are such that they cannot even entrust the future to them, then we are already shooting ourselves in the foot. Those who have read or followed what Dr. Hamilton said must have noticed that pre-1945 election politics in Nigeria was basically not about regions. It created the Zikis movement, it created the old NCNC. The old NCNC was not about regionalism. The NNDP was not about regionalism. They were thinking of a pan-Nigerian, pan-Africanist movement. But the Richard's Constitution was to effectively bifurcate and destroy that nationalist movement to create room for the elitist stooges that we later had. So moving forward now, the next generation of leaders are the students. What are we doing to ensure that they be part of a nationalist movement? That is the query for us as we move forward on that. I want to assure you that whenever the book is presented, Lagos State will handsomely appreciate the contributions of Mr. Oyepo to making Lagos the dream city. Thank you very much.
My name is Abdullah Uba Adamu. I'm the Vice Chancellor of the largest university in the galaxy. This university is called National Open University of Nigeria. It is the only university that provides hope for the hopeless. It is the only university that makes people believe in themselves. And I'm here on behalf of the 420,000 students of the National Open University of Nigeria to congratulate Uncle Ray on this attainment of 70th birthday. He is 70 years, I'm 62. So there's a gap of about 8 years between us, but I consider him not just simply an uncle, but also a father. I'm a professor of media and cultural communication, and therefore I followed Uncle Ray's writing right from the very beginning. And I would say, and Professor Akinyemi is here to back me up, there is no way anybody, anywhere in this country will write the intellectual history of Nigeria, the economic history of Nigeria, the social history of Nigeria without this watch. It's impossible. And if there's any professor out there who think he can do it, he is welcome to try. So Uncle Ray, thank you very much for your invaluable contribution to the intellectual history of this country. On behalf of all the mass communication students in Nigeria, we would like to wish you a happy birthday and many more returns. We mass communicators and all the students of mass communications are kindly inviting all of us here to come back to this hall 70 years from now to celebrate 140th anniversary of Ray Ekpo. Thank you.
The celebration will be in the galaxy, right? Send the Zamala. Kadan Dakata. My Bashara, the Nidike. Dalaka Dakata. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Udo Aka, please come to the microphone, please.
Mr. Chairman, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I should not miss this event honoring Ray Ekpo. Ray is a member of my family. I'm a member of his family. I'm happy to be here to join on behalf of my family, my organization, to congratulate Ray for 70th birthday. I also congratulate Ujai, who has held the fort when Ray went through all the troubles he had gone through. When Ray moved from Calabar to Lagos, I did not want his wife to remain in Calabar. And I'm glad he did a good job at home and in the office. Listening to all that have been said about Ray, we all from his family are proud. He's an unannounced icon. We don't have too many like him, and we pray and hope that we will. I was interested in today's topic, the topic of today's symposium, and I had a question to raise that all of these leadership issues in Nigeria, in every culture now and in the past, those who are appointed or elected to leadership positions in the public service are given the oath of office before they resume work. The current practice virtually everywhere is to swear by the Holy Bible or the Holy Quran to do, quote, to do what is right to all manners of people according to law without fear or favor, affection or ill will. Given the prevailing culture of flagrant abuse of office, does the oath of office have any meaning or any significance? Should we consider swearing by symbols of African ancient gods, such as the iron taken from ancient shrines? Because I believe if the same people that swear on the Bible and the Quran flagrantly abuse their office, what is the significance of the oath of office? Mr. Chairman, that is the question I wanted to ask. So maybe we should keep thinking for the future whether we should use other symbols, since we don't respect the Bible and we don't respect the Quran. Thank you very much, Mr. Ray. Congratulations.
I'm going to look at it. Now let's come to the fragments of history, 3 books written by our celebrant of today, and the children will take it one after the other, will dissect it, and I'm sure you heard what the SSG in his home place has said. As the Spirit moves him, he'll come over and say so much. But who's taking it? Who's the first coming to talk about this book?
This is Edikan Ray Osho. I'm my dad's second daughter and last child. The title of the article I'm going to read is called "The King Reigns, but Does Not Rule." 2 of the state military governors have been chosen to go for a course recently. The Daily Times of Saturday, May 22nd, 1976, back page, states that the Kano State Governor, Colonel Sani Bello, has, with effect from May 19, proceeded on leave in preparation for a 6-month senior officers course at Jaji in Kaduna State. An official announcement said that the governor is expected to resume as the state governor in December. The commander of the Nigerian Air Force Base, Kano, Group Captain W.I. Ameyi Deno, is to act as governor of the state, concluded the report. The Nigerian Chronicle of Tuesday, May 25, 1976, carried on its front page the following report. The Cross River State military governor, Colonel Ufoma Omu, yesterday swore in the commander of 13 Infantry Brigade, Nigerian Army, Calabar, Colonel Abubakar Waziri, as acting governor. Colonel Omu left yesterday, May 24, on a course which will last 6 months. This brings to 3 the number of state military governors who have so far been selected for a course since July 29. The first was Navy Captain Aduwo, who was governor of the former Western states. I do not know if Captain Aduwo has completed his training, and if he has, whether he will return to the former Western states as military governor of one of the states. However, all the three states, Ogun, Ondo, and Oyo, which together form the former Western states, do have substantive military governors as at now. Secondly, apart from when substantive military governors go on tours or on vacation leave, the cases of Kano and Cross River states make the third time where acting military governors have been appointed in the country. The first case was after the February 13 attempted coup in which the governor of Kwara State, Colonel Ibrahim Taiwo, was murdered. The commander of the 26th Infantry Brigade, Nigerian Army, Ilorin, Lieutenant Colonel Joe Madugu, who is now serving a 2-year jail term for his part in the affairs of February 13, was removed, and Major Adedipe was made both acting commander of the brigade and acting governor of the state. Major Adedipe acted in a dual capacity for 1 month until Brigadier George Ini, former governor of Bendel State, was posted on March 15 to Kwara State as governor. Let me state for the avoidance of doubt and misconstruction that I believe that education, whether formal or informal, is a continuous process. It stops the day your heartbeat stops. Therefore, training is good. It has the ability of making a bad worker good, a good worker better, and a better worker best. It can expose someone to new perspectives, new methods, new approaches, and these may have the overall effect of expanding the recipient's mental horizon and pushing further the frontiers of his knowledge. But to take a state governor away on training for 6 months while the state concerned goes on vacation under the hands of an acting governor is less than fair. The job of a military governor is a very important one. He is the #1 citizen in his state. He is the liaison officer between Lagos and his state. He is so important that anytime he wants to travel out, press people are always around with tape recorders, so that if perchance he coughs or sneezes, the magical instruments will record it for them. When he is back from his trip, they also congregate at the airport to ask what he brought home from his journey. What the military governor does and how he does it is determines to a sizable extent the destiny of the people within his state. His job is not like that of a clerical officer, routine and undemanding of his initiative. That's why army recruits are not chosen as military governors. Only senior officers who have had experience that is varied and wide-ranging in the management of men and materials are appointed. At present, all the state military governors are chosen from the rank of lieutenant colonel or equivalent and above. That emphasizes in another way the importance of the post. What an acting appointment means is that the powers given to the actor are not as full as those of the substantive holder of the post. The acting man cannot therefore take major decisions without clearance from or consultation with the real man in the post. It is my persuasion that 6 months is a long period for a state to be asked to go on holiday. The course of events in and the destiny of a country can be changed within 6 months. The achievements within 6 months of our human prodigy, General Murtala Mohammed, refer. Besides, even the most devoted, which means that not much certainly can be achieved during the 6-month sabbatical period. The expectations of the people are not such that they will allow their leader to say, as the leader of the French Revolution said, "There go my people. I must find out where they are going so I can lead them." Moreover, the attention of the acting military governors must inevitably be divided. They are also the substantive bosses of their military commands. In other words, they are holding 2 jobs at once, and these jobs are different in content and scope. One master will be served better than the other. Certainly. If the acting military governor also appoints an acting commander of his brigade, it will mean that both jobs have acting heads, which is not good. So heads we lose, and tails we lose. Either way, there is no merit. We do not know the nature of the course which Colonel Bello and Colonel Omu are going to attend, except that it is a senior military officer's course. A senior military officer's course may include some doses of lectures on public administration, but it is not strictly or even mainly a course on public administration or governorship. because army officers are not professional public administrators. Why their course may include public administration is the fact that in whatever posting they find themselves, army officers have to deal with and manage people and the public, which is to say that the 6-month training course may not have a direct bearing with the post of a military governor. This raises the question of how much good such a course can do for a state whose governor has been withdrawn for 6 months and brought back, as against the harm it can do. There's even a more important side to the issue. Supposing you have an acting military governor who throws overboard the unenviable role of a rubber stamp ruler, but takes decisions on issues of fundamental importance that are outside the ambit of his prescribed role. How do you guarantee that the substantive holder of the post will not, on his return, reverse such decisions, thus bringing embarrassment to the acting man and a setback to the state? This is not fiction. It has happened before. In 1974, when Mr. Udoaka Iswene went on vacation abroad, the then Army Commander in Calabar, now Quartermaster General, Brigadier Olu Bajowa, took some far-reaching decisions on the Abia affair. When Mr. Iswene came back, he reversed some of those decisions. How about that? This acting trend should not be allowed to continue. It lacks merit, and it is pregnant with palaver. 1, it tends to show up the job of a military governor as a sinecure, and it's not supposed to be that. 2, with less understanding, the possibility of embarrassment and friction cannot be ruled out. 3, the period of recess can, in terms of taking major decisions, be regarded as a setback for the state concerned. 4, it affects the image of the regime. It would have been all right for Gowon's regime of idleness, but not for one that came to smash idleness, lethargy, and foot dragging. A situation where the king reigns but does not rule is awkward. This is an article from May 30th, 1976 in the Sunday Chronicle. Thank you.
My name is Mfoniso Ray Eku. I am the son of the celebrant Mr. Ray Eku. The title of my article is going to be The Story of Sodom and Gomorrah. In the Holy Bible, there were 5 cities that were the headquarters of immorality. 3 of them were Admah, Zebklim, and Zoar. And the best known ones were Sodom and Gomorrah. All the 5 cities were destroyed by fire from heaven because of their unnatural and carnal wickedness. This is how the word sodomy, meaning sexual perversion, crept into the dictionary and gained currency. But in contemporary use, Sodom and Gomorrah represent not just sexual malfeasance, but also embrace the entire spectrum of moral turpitude. And most think that if the National Ethnic Reorientation Committee that President Shehu Shagari has set up does its work thoroughly as expected, the report that it will present to the president will have to be called Sodom and Gomorrah. The committee, remember, is to study the nature and extent of causes and the apparent breakdown in our national ethic and discipline in all their ramifications, determine their impact on our society and economy, and prescribe immediate and long-term solutions. We have a long history of moral turpitude in this country, beginning from the First Republic, where checks were allegedly signed with toes. The military boys took over and brought the looting that they were accustomed to at the war front to the government and perfected the act there. Just look around today, and if you find any of the retired senior army officers who is not doing very, very well, perhaps too well for himself, you may let us know. And so it was that when Murtala Mohammed took over the government in 1975, he confiscated the property of 10 out of the 12 military governors that he and his men swept out of the office. Only governors Rotimi of the Western States and Johnson of Lagos were adjudged clean, although some of the governors, quote-unquote, convicted by the Murtala regime are still protesting their innocence today. And so it was that a man called Godwin Dabo went to court and swore to an affidavit, rallying all sorts of things against the late Joseph Taka, who was then a commissioner in Gowon's cabinet. Gowon fidgeted, but the shrill voice of Dabo could not be drowned as the Daily Times then picked up the battle from there. Pressure was piled on Taka. He resigned. At the other end, a man called Akwe Aku woke up and swore to an affidavit against Governor Gomwok, alleging wrongdoing. The heat was turned on Gomwok. He was forced out of office. The country was agog. The question was, who would be the next victim? An ethical revolution was about to happen. Then all of a sudden, Chief Justice Teslim Elias, acting presumably under pressure, decided that the affidavit would no longer be tolerated. The ethical revolution that was about to be born was aborted. I don't know if the present government has a stomach for the ethical revolution that it is asking for. When Murtala took over the government, he had a vision to purify the country. Before he embarked on his nationwide purge, in which about 10,000 public servants lost their jobs, Murtala was said to have given up all the wealth that he had allegedly illegally acquired during the war. He was at this point like Caesar's wife, above reproach. At his death, Mohammed, the head of state, was said to have about 24 naira to his name. We have talked several times about corruption in the police force, customs, tax offices, NEPA, etc. And there is no need to belabor this point. The P&T has been in the news too in this respect, but perhaps the dimension that corruption has now assumed in the place no one had anticipated. And this development is threatening to wreck the good work that the energetic Aldo Ogbe has been doing. Although a telephone is officially installed at 200 naira, you now have to pay as much as 1,000 naira to get one. I paid for a telephone to be installed in my apartment since March of last year. Up until now, I can't get one. Probably I have to decide whether I should pay 1,000 naira and get the small useful box, or continue to play it straight and just wait until Christ comes again. A few weeks ago, an influential columnist alleged that a large sum of money was provided by one politician for the bribing of National Assembly legislators on the revenue allocation bill. No one had said no, it didn't happen, and I take it that it did happen. A few days ago, a member of the House of Reps was complaining that he made a good speech on an important aspect of the nation's life, but almost all the correspondents ignored the speech. He then made his inquiries and found out that why they treated him like a leper was that he had forgotten that Xmas is a period of gift giving, and that was the weapon. And at the appropriate time, all the firefighting equipment will be dead, and the firefighting men will have diarrhea or dysentery, and the fire will burn. Take my warning. Parents, schools, and churches in the good dead days were expected to be the repository of morality, but parents are setting bad examples for their kids. Don't some men chase the high school friends of their daughters in the girls' presence? And don't the teachers turn contractors and traders? Also show life question papers to sweet smiling female people. And a church reverend tells you, let's pray, close your eyes. Beware, for before you open your eyes, the reverend may have eloped with your wife. Whom will you sue, the church or God? And then you check the church treasury. It is empty, thanks to the smart reverend. The stories of our moral recklessness can fill volumes which can fill our national library. The report that the Ethical Reorientation Committee members are bringing out should make a juicy piece of literature, and in spite of the governmentees with which such reports are usually written, it will make a bestseller. This article is from January 23, 1983, Sunday Concord. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. This article is titled A Hollow Ritual. They all made it look as though there was some serious business going on. A huge knock on the door. The judge enters, everybody sits down. The judge appears in black suit, the lawyers appear in black suits, and all the ceremonies, protocols, and rituals associated with such occasions are observed. But in the end, it turned out to be a joke, a huge joke, a hollow ritual of comic tragedy, which the trial of a president ought not to be. It was clear to most people after a few days of the clowning that was going on in the Justice Samson Uwaifo Tribunal that was hearing the case of the former President Shehu Shagari and the ex-Vice President Alex Ekweme that the whole thing was a farce, inelegantly contrived, much in the manner of a kangaroo court, rendered even more kangarooic, permit the coinage, by the abject naivety of the presiding judge. But everything was dressed up in the robes of a court. Prosecution, witnesses, defense et al. And it's all too amazing that any judge worth the chair on which he sits could not see that what was going on in the name of a trial was a non-trial, an insult to his intellect, his integrity, and his profession. From start to finish, it was apparent that Baba Mohammed Jamare was a defense counsel masquerading as a prosecution witness. Every inch of the way, the Deputy Commissioner of Police bent over backwards to ensure that the case he was supposed to have investigated those past 2 years would collapse like a house of cards. The case did collapse just as he wished, and Kehinde Shofola, the defense counsel, struggled pathetically to play a role that was not available for him to play, since Jamare had stolen the thunder from him. Shofola had no choice but to play the role of a cheerleader. It was a pathetic scene, one that was capable of inducing nausea. The investigating police officer would step forward and tell the tribunal the mind-boggling story of how Nigeria's money was shared by a few fat cats in the residence of the president. And the president, the innocent Jesus of Nigeria, instead of calling the police to arrest the bastards, just as the other Jesus did when some crooks invaded the temple, decided to step out at that time for prayers. By the time he said, Amen, the crooks in his house had also said, Amen, drawing the curtain on one of the scenes of one of the acts of one of the plays titled, The Raping of Nigeria. Then Jamare would step out again to tell the tribunal that although many things were going the wrong way, the executive president of Nigeria didn't know anything, didn't see anything, didn't hear anything, didn't smell anything, for as soon as he became president, he lost his sense of intuition, his sense of sight, his sense of hearing, and his sense of smell. After this charade of public deceit, the witnesses would be called. And who were the witnesses? The very same people who scrambled for the money. They would tell the tribunal that the president didn't know whether their party, the NPN, had financial problems or not. He didn't know how contracts were awarded, whether kickbacks were given or taken and by whom, although he was always present at the meetings of the party's caucus, the highest policy-making body of the party and the government. A more sensitive judge, a judge determined to get to the bottom of the matter, a Judge John Serika of the Watergate fame, would have ordered the immediate arrest of those crooks, some of whom had appeared in court to give evidence on the matter. But Samson Uwaifo didn't. He patiently listened to all the hogwash, and his judgment indicated he naively believed it all. Uwaifo even had the temerity to tell Nigerians who lived in Nigeria in the years of the Holocaust, 1979 to 1983, the years when the greatest slaughter of Nigeria took place, that the price of rice was brought down from 100 naira per bag to 45 naira. It is either that the judge was living on the moon at the time, or he had just returned from the island of bliss, or he had something up his sleeves, for no one who lived in this country at the period, or lives here now, and pays all the taxes and levies and donations and tariffs and surcharges will be in so much want of a sense of history or a sense of reality. The judge may argue that he decided the case based on the facts placed before him, but even a pupil lawyer doing his apprenticeship in the dingy chambers of a charge and bail lawyer in a one-room office in Isaleko knows that the judge has the latitude, particularly in a landmark case such as this, to call for more facts that would enable him to arrive at a just and believable decision. No case is decided in the abstract. Every judgment finds its meaning only in time and space. No judgment can ignore the prevailing circumstances of a given society at a given time. To listen to this story of the sack of Naira administration that distinguished itself for its unconscionableness and not be shocked by it is to display a wanton disregard for the moral sensitivity of the long-suffering people of Nigeria. What the Uwaifo Tribunal was saying, in effect, is that Shagari and his gang did no wrong, that the country should call them back, apologize to them, give them a bouquet of flowers, kiss them on both cheeks, and hand over the government to them, and then it will be business as usual. And what are Nigerians expected to say to all of this? to simply sigh and say that it is one of those things, a typical Nigerian expression for nonchalance, and then take their Bibles and Qurans and go to the churches and the mosques and pray to God and Allah to bless the souls of those who turned the country into Dante's Inferno, 1979 to 1983. But unlike the Uwaifo panel, the Babangida government has displayed a deep sense of sensitivity to the public mood, giving itself the image of a government that is politically sagacious. It has ignored for now the ridiculous order for the freeing of Shagari and his deputy, Alex Ekweme. The so-called judgment should be dumped in the refuse bin where it belongs, for it is not worth the piece of paper on which it is written. The loser in this case is, of course, Justice Uwaifo, who will be recorded on the wrong side of history as one Nigerian who was given a national assignment, but who discharged it with unparalleled perfunctoriness. This article was published in Newswatch, February 3, 1986. And my name is Elu Rembakri. Thank you.
20, 40, 50, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70.
Let's have Dan Albese a news watch. We're going to just spell. Are you going to be able to give me all of that? Give me an N. No, this is not. I mean, this is sounding as if we're not happy about it. Give me an N, an E, a W, an S, a T, a C, and an H. News watch. Thank you. Please, your hand, just stretch your hand. Madam, mommy, your hand on it. That's good. We'll just count 4 and then we'll cut this. 1. Give me a 1. Give me a 2. Give me a 3 and a 4. Congratulations. Good. Mr. Mrs. of friend, please come. Reiku's brother should come and the wife. Thank you. An R, an A, and a Y. Ray. Ray in the galaxy. The celebrant. Yes. So that they will show a graph for us. It's you. All right. So you're going to take love from Ambode to Akwa Ibom. Let's do it this way then. Give me an E. Oh God, that teacher will never work. Give me an E, a K, a P. Well, I don't scatter my head. And a U. His remarks. He has to take the remarks, then we'll be ready for other things.
The chairman, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I've been warned that people are leaving, so I should cut out the protocol and calling different people and their names and their titles and so on. So I plead that I will be forgiven if I don't do a recitation of all the names and titles and so on. Everybody, most people have been recognized already by the Master of Ceremony. So I take it that I have also recognized them, and we can go ahead with the speech. I got a congratulatory message from an unlikely source this morning, and I'll read it to you. No prize for guessing right. President Muhammadu Buhari has sent warm gratitude greetings to veteran journalist and co-founder of Newswatch magazine. Mr. Ray Epu, who turns 17 today and clocks 45 years working as a journalist and an administrator. Buhari, in a statement by the Special Advisor on Media and Publicity, Femi Adesina, joined the media world, family and friends of the renowned columnist and activist in celebrating the many years of exceptional contribution to national development through his writings, speaking engagements, and leadership roles. The President believed Epu's consistency and forthrightness in speaking and writing the truth to authorities deserve special commendation, especially the many times he placed his life at risk in fighting for democracy and the institutionalization of good governance in Nigeria. As Epu turns a septuagenarian, Buhari affirmed that his wealth of knowledge, wisdom, and editorial skills should serve as a benchmark for upcoming journalists, as the future of the industry rests on the indelible tenets of fairness, accuracy, and balance. He prayed that the Almighty God will grant the prolific writer longer life, good health, and more wisdom to save the nation and humanity. I said unlikely source because I wasn't too sure that politicians like to be told the truth by people who are considered to be rebels or activists. And I got this from the President. I want to thank him immensely. It means I don't know too much about Nigerian politicians, that they can be different sometimes. So I'm truly grateful to the President for remembering a small man like me in the midst of all the serious issues that he has to contend with. So I hope that this message of gratitude will be conveyed to His Excellency the President. You are already aware that through some of the interviews I have granted to some newspapers and the brochure in your hands, that I have toiled for 45 years in journalism's vineyard. That's why you have 70.45. I believe I need to explain the philosophy that underpins my practice of journalism. My journalism is a journalism of facts and figures, robust but fair commentary. As we say it in the industry, facts are sacred, but comment is free. But comments must be based on correct facts, correctly stated. I go to great lengths to get my facts and figures to illuminate my writing. It is an obligation that I owe, and indeed any responsible journalist owes to the reading public. Journalism, I believe, is a sacred duty to be performed without fear of favor, affection, or ill will. Journalism's fairness doctrine is for me an article of faith, the linchpin of responsible journalism. It is the rigor involved in being fair that can lead to the unveiling of the truth, and truth-finding is at the epicenter of responsible journalism. Responsible journalism is the antidote to what has come to be known today as fake news. Fake news, whether disseminated by the social media or the mainstream media, is irresponsible. It is the enemy of free speech and the people's right to know. It blocks access to credible information. It pollutes and poisons the well of fair public and private communication. It is therefore a danger to society. Only the truth can heal us, and fake news can never link of the truth. In Section 22 of the 1999 Constitution, the media are asked to hold the government accountable to the people. It states, and I quote, "The press, radio and television and other agencies of the mass media shall at all times be free to uphold the fundamental objectives contained in this chapter and uphold the responsibility of the government to the people." It does not say that the media should be lick-spittle sycophants. In fact, the media are under no obligation to support or oppose any government unconditionally. It has only an obligation to support or oppose ideas, proposals, programs, and policies of the government based on the media's perception of their usefulness or otherwise to the smooth functioning and well-being of the society. Blind support or blind opposition to any government is a danger to society. Groveling sycophants or tyrannical enemies of the government do more harm than good to society because they mislead and misdirect the government and its people. In every government, there is almost always a gang of muscular sycophants who tell the Oga at the top what they think he wants to hear, not what he needs to hear. There are several people in the public service who take unlawful and illegal actions. Their explanation is always, I quote, "I am taking orders from above," end of quote. This is what is called Nuremberg defense. Nuremberg defense does not exculpate anyone from liability, because if it is unlawful, it is unlawful. If it is illegal, it is illegal. The media are regarded as a free marketplace of ideas, where 100 flowers must be allowed to bloom. It is this cross-fertilization of ideas that gives journalism its lifeblood. I consider myself a journalism activist who must push into the public space only ideas that can be the building blocks of a fair, just, and egalitarian society. Every editor, I believe, is an evaluative filter who sorts out the wheat from the chaff, throws away the chaff, and puts the wheat on the table for consumption. An editor can, through his filtration process, contribute to the building or the breaking of his society. So an editor must use his discretion in favor of contributing to the building of a better society, one that is better than he made it. Let me now put in a few words of my own on the subject of today's colloquium, even though the guest lecturer and the discussants have done a marvelous job. The reason I chose this subject is because I believe that leadership matters. Leadership makes all the difference. Leadership is all the rage. As Charles de Gaulle put it, and I quote, "Men are of no importance. What counts is who commands," end of quote. The leader who has vision is the one who can make the difference. He can make the difference because he also has the wherewithal for leadership. The rules, the laws, the ethics, the means of dishing out punishment for infringement or non-performance, or rewards for good performance. When Golda Meir was the Prime Minister of Israel, she lamented that of all the places in the world, Moses took Israelites through a long journey to come and settle in the desert. But the Israeli governments over time have turned that desert into a flourishing territory. They are surrounded by enemies, but they have shown resilience and creativity thanks to the vision of their leaders. Drip irrigation has turned a desert country into a flourishing farmland. In their book, Startup Nation, the story of Israel's economic miracle. Dan Seno and Saul Singer said, and I quote, "How can Israel, with only 7.1 million people, no natural resources, enemies on every border, and in a constant state of war, produce more startup companies than Japan, India, Korea, Canada, and the United Kingdom?" End of quote. It is leadership. Compare Israel with Nigeria, which had a 30-month civil war that also brought a great deal of adversity to the people of Biafra. We did not turn that war, that adversity, into an opportunity to become a second or first world country. Nigerian soldiers had access to arms, food, and fuel, in fact, everything they wanted, but Biafrans did not. They had to create Obunigwe, manufacture petrol and kerosene and salt with their bare hands and crude technology, and perform several other works of wonder to survive. There was even a Dr. Njoku who produced some vaccines after the war, but nobody looked in his direction. The popular notion was that General Yakubu Gowon would assemble those Biafran scientists and challenge them to refine their inventions. But politics took over and killed the idea, because it would have meant that the Igbos were smarter and more brilliant than everyone else. So we, all of us, lost the opportunity to take Nigeria into a higher development realm. We are still at ground zero, the semi-permanent place of the third world. We are still called underdeveloped country, although we try to give ourselves some cold comfort by calling ourselves developing country. So leadership is central to our underdevelopment and would have been central to our entry into the land of fulfillment if we got it right. Is Nigeria's slow development situation a function of colonialism, military rule, or poor constitution? The colonialists left 57 years ago. I remember that Governor Sam Mbakwe of Imo State had suggested, not entirely jokingly, that we should recall the colonialists and hand back the country for them to run. But you will agree that it would be futile or even foolish to continue to blame the colonialists who left our shores 57 years ago for our stunted growth. Or do we finger military rule for our backwardness? But the Southeast Asian tigers, who are now called Asian dragons, also had military rule. The difference is that they use the discipline, their command structure, and the no-nonsense approach to problem solving to good effect. But our military were basically renegade elite, interested largely in a chop and quench analysis, as searching for the funds squirreled out of the country and lodged in various coded accounts in various countries. So it boils down to the poverty or the failure of leadership. Out of the 12 military governors of the Yakubu Gowon era investigated, 10 were indicted. Only 2 were declared uncorrupt. No other military government has been investigated since then. So we have no idea of the size of the worms that would have crawled out of the cans, and whether or not the discovery would be of stratospheric proportion. Ladies and gentlemen, some people blame our woes on our constitutions. We ran the parliamentary system from 1960 to January 15, 1966, and the presidential system from October 1, 1979 to December 31, 1983. We have also run it from 1999 till date. Both the parliamentary and presidential systems have worked well in Britain and the United States, from where we imported them. So why has none of them worked smoothly like a well-oiled Swiss watch in Nigeria? My considered view is that the operators of the Constitution must be held responsible. It is they who buy voters. It is they who approve for themselves humongous salaries. It is they who disobey the courts. It is they who do mago-mago impeachment. It is they who are involved in corruption or who condone it. It is they who fail to take decisive action when problems stare us in the face. It is they who cross carpets at random. So at the end of the day, it is a matter of purposeful leadership or lack of it. Let me say here that in all of this, the followers have a role to play. That is what is called the office of the citizen. The citizen may have no air-conditioned office or desk or chair. If he has his placard and the will to fight for a better society, we may get there before long. That is what the students of the University of Ibadan did in 1962. And their demonstration aborted the obnoxious Anglo Defense Pact. That is what the Super Falcons did before the allowances were paid a couple of years ago. That is what Enough is Enough did to stir the National Assembly into using the doctrine of necessity to make Vice President Goodluck Jonathan the acting president when President Umaru Yar'Adua was sick. The citizens can do more. If the citizens had refused to accept the bribe offered to voters in the Edo, Anambra, Ondo, and Ekiti governorship elections, what would have happened? There would have been no buying and selling of votes. Since the leaders offered the bribe and the followers collected it, both of them were tied up in a sordid corruption cobweb. So it is obvious that followership also counts, even though I agree with De Gaulle that what counts more is he who commands. Thank you very much.
Brevity is the soul of wit. See what he did, couched it in his special way, and he didn't bother us with so much grammar. Succinct and straight to the point. I have memorized it, and I know a lot of us have also done the same thing. Your hands together for Mr. Ray Ekpo again, ladies and gentlemen. Now, Ray will still take the floor. He has some surprises to spring at some of us in the audience. Let me leave the podium to him then. He has some special presentations he has to do. And I don't know how his mind is working, but he wants to throw some good things into the audience. Please come with him. We just have two more items, and they would have wound up this event for today. That's the vote of thanks, closing remarks by the chair of cocktails will take center stage at the fora as we go out. Thank you.
We're giving this token to all of those who have played a part in making this ceremony successful. That's the only thing we can do. We don't have money to give them for the service they have delivered, but I believe that this is important. They can keep it in their houses and say that some years ago they came to do this for Nigeria. Thank you very much, Professor.
The masters. Who She also has a flagship program, RSVP, Register, Select, Vote, and Protect. Oh, you. Oh, no, I'm for what you mean? I told you, maybe I love you. I'm smiling. I bet the Zama, then Zoku said he came in Magara. So, Madalla. All right. The vote of thanks.
And a pleasure to give this vote of thanks today to someone who I usually call Daddy, but today I'll just refer to him as Mr. Reeku, the journalistic legend of Nigeria. I first came across the person Reeku in 1986 as a 10-year-old boy in the events following the sad assassination of the late Delegiwa. Then I remember my father bought almost all the magazines on the story, and for some reason, maybe it was like a story from an action book or something. I read everything, and a name that always came up in the stories was a certain Ray Eko. And I was amazed at what he had to go through and at the sort of difficult experience he had in the days and the months and the years that followed that. Fast forward 15 years after, and I had another privilege of meeting Elu Ray Mbakwe, my wife today. Ray's princess, the Adiara of the Ekpo family. And back in the days when I'd always go to visit her at the GRA home, Mr. Ekpo would never say anything to me, and I wondered, did he like me or did he not like me? Until one day, Elu said, "You're okay. My father said you can now park in the compound." Since then, Ray has become my father-in-law, my father, my mentor, a helper, an advisor. I'm therefore not surprised at the turnout of everyone who has come here to celebrate his 70th birthday and his 45 years as a journalist. This outpouring of goodwill is amazing, and all I can say on his behalf is thank you. Thank you to the chairman, Professor Akinyemi, who was also chairman at my wedding, by the way. Thank you to the Master of Ceremony, Uncle Bisi. Thank you to the moderator, Uncle Dan. And of course to the lecturer, who was represented by Uncle Dan, Dr. Chidi Amuta, and the panelists. Ms. Yemi Adamoleku, Mr. Sam Omashaye, Mr. Debo Adeshino. Thank you very much. I would also like to say thank you to representatives of the Akwa Ibom State Government. I will try to use Abadie. The representative of this Lagos State Government, thank you very much. Your Excellencies, the former governor of Akwa Ibom State, Obong Victor Atta, the former governor of Ogun State, Chief Shegun Oshoba, media executives here. I will not attempt to call all the names. I have some names, but I know I will miss so many important names, so I will just recognize all the media executives here. The ladies and gentlemen of the press, thank you very much. Family members, friends, the children of Mr. Reeku, led by Mrs. Elure Mbakwe, Edikan, Mfoniso, Alex. Thank you very much. Last but not least, to the one who has stayed by Mr. Reeku's side through thick and thin, through all the detentions, through all the attacks, through all the persecutions, my mamito, Mrs. Oyai Reeku. Thank you very much, Mommy. We have spoken today about Nigeria, the leadership question. My personal opinion is that we are yet to really, their narrative must change. To borrow the title of the book from Chinua Achebe, There Was a Country, to There Is a Country. That country is called Nigeria, and I am proudly Nigerian. As I close out, I say thank you again. And on behalf of Ray and his family, please accept our best wishes and prayers for Johnny Mercies. Thank you very much.
journalism in him shows all the time. Let me warn again. All right, ladies and gentlemen, the cameramen, the photographers, let me appeal to you again. We're going to start this event in earnest. And I plead with you to do the same thing, please. I see also here, we'll do the national anthem. And the young, very promising lady who will lead us is just setting out to break grounds at as young as she is. Esther Benyogo Emmanuel is a passionate music minister from Nigeria. Undoubtedly unique talent and passion has paved ways for many victories for her. And she would... No. Once the vice president has taken his position, we can do the national anthem. And I would wish that the cameramen and the photographers be very snappy about this. So, that's why we started with the recognitions. But I'm still pleading with our cameramen and the photographers. Talking on this. Vice President is going around exchanging pleasantries as he normally does. And once I see that he's seated, and I know that the lady is leading the national anthem is also ready, I told you a bit about her.
You're not talking to me. Do I know you?
Don't
undoubtedly unique talent and passion has paved ways for many victories for her. Many prestigious platforms as next big teen of the GGC and the winner of all, including the Voice of Nigeria Season 3. Thank you very much, and that's the way to properly set us on the right mood today. But we must supplicate first before we settle down properly for today's event. Let me call then on Archbishop Gaspar Peter Akinola to please lead us in the opening prayer. Thank you very much, sir. I remember when we had something like this in 2019 when Akinogu turned 80. It was Pastor Tunde Bakari. But I just want to say that Akinogu is a man of prayers, and his prayers are working for him. Thank you very much, President Olusegun Obasanjo, for yielding your position for Akinogu to do the right thing. Madam should be by your left. Thank you very much. God bless you, President Olusegun Obasanjo. I was watching that. Thank you, sir. Once we're done with the prayers, I'd like for the chief host, as confirmed by the celebrant himself, that's the governor of Ogun State, to get ready to welcome us formally to this event.
The Lord be with you. Before we pray, I want to remind us that this gathering is for the celebration of the 85th birthday of Chief Olusegun Oshoba. About just more than 85, it's going to 90. And also to do the celebration, this book launch is being organized. My dear Egbon, as you celebrate your 85th birthday, please bear in mind what the Holy Writ has enjoined us to do. The prayer is, teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. And that goes for all of us who are here gathered, to pray earnestly to God, to teach us to number our days, so that we can apply our hearts to wisdom. Wisdom to know God and to serve Him, and wisdom to run away from sin. Small sin and big sin, which is holding our country back to where we are today. Teach us, O Lord, to number our days. And so as we gather now to pray, may I ask you to bow our heads in prayer. Gracious God, our Heavenly Father, our Creator, our Preserver, and Giver of all good things, here we are gathered together in your name from all over the country to celebrate your servant, Chief Olusegun Oshoba, as he attains the age of 85 in the land of the living. We thank you, O Lord, for his life. We thank you for all that he has done. We thank you for his achievements in life, for his family, for his friends, for his well-wishers. Lord, we give you thanks and we praise you. For all who are here today, for bringing them here in safety and protecting them from dangers of the road, Lord, we thank you. As we gather now in your name, we pray for your presence among us. Come, O Lord, in the power of the Holy Spirit, and be with each and every one of us, and keep us safe and bless us. Through this program, Lord, no evil will come among us. No danger will come among us. We will do everything to your honor, to your glory, and your name will be blessed and glorified. Thank you, Heavenly Father, for hearing our prayers and for being with us. All this we ask with thanksgiving through Jesus Christ, our Lord.
In fact, Prince Dapo Abiodun, who was the chief host 5 years ago, just as he is today, was just a month in office as the governor of Ogun State, the home state of the man we're celebrating. Larry Idowu, the publisher of the book, observes the new book by Chief Segun Oshoba, My Life in the Public Eye, is a legacy work that totally encapsulates the life of Chief Segun Oshoba, the star reporter, astute journalist, consummate administrator, and very courageous but friendly politician who has built bridges of friendship across the length and breadth of Nigeria, where he has amassed enormous goodwill. It certainly will not be out of place to pay well-deserved homage to Chief Segun Oshoba as one of those who worked assiduously for the entrenchment of the democracy Nigeria is enjoying today. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'd like you to put your hands together for Chief Segun Oshoba, the man we're celebrating here today. All right. At his request, rightly so, the man who tells the whole world that Chief Segun Oshoba is his father, he actually has adopted him as a father since he lost his own biological father some years ago, will be the one to lead us in the welcome address of today. In fact, the event of today is his own. Your hands please together for Governor Dakpo. All right, let's still go on. Chief Lanre Dowu is the man who